How to find the best routes with flight connections. Let's talk about using an awesome tool called Flight Connections. And by the way, don't forget that you can always check the show notes for links to things. So we're going to talk all about this today. And this tool in particular, I think, is very visual. So, obviously this video should help, but also playing with it some on your own is going to help. So you're going to want to check the show notes for a link to Flight Connections. But Greg, let's talk about this tool. Why is it useful? How is it useful? There's both a free version and a paid version. What's different? Should we get the paid version? Let's start with the free version. What can you tell me about this tool and what's going on?
Sure. I'll show you in a second. First, I just want to mention that Nick and I have been using it all the time in general for all kinds of purposes. But lately, as we record this, we've been using it a lot more in preparation for our Million Mile Madness 2024 challenge. So check that out if you haven't already, but you'll see why it's come in handy when you read about that challenge. All right. I'm going to share my desktop and we'll look at the tool at all it does. Okay, now you're seeing flight connections. This shows all of the flights available everywhere. And even with the free version, you can answer questions like, where in the United States does SAS, Scandinavian Airlines, fly from? Simply by doing something like filtering to SAS. And boom, you can see all of the routes. And then, if you want to know more about a particular route, let's say Chicago, you can pick the from and to, and not only does it show you, the route visually on the right side, but on the left, you could see that they fly every day, and you could even click to check, flight prices and things. That'll take you to Kayak. What else can you do with the free version? Let's say you simply want to see all of the flights from your home airport. I'm going to clear out these previous things. So Nick's your closest airport is Albany, right?
That's right.
So you can see he has a decent number of flights from Albany, even though it's not a huge number. And if you want to know which airlines fly out of that airport, you could click on the drop down for airlines, and it lists all of the airlines that fly from Albany at the top, and all airlines is below, meaning these are airlines that don't necessarily
That don't
fly
fly to Albany.
that don't fly from Albany. Yeah, but you can see all the ones that do fly from Albany in that list. So I
See,
find
we
that
have some
really handy.
selection. We have some selection out of Albany. It's useful for figuring out alliance things also, even though with the free version only allows you to filter by airline. You can, if you know your alliances, you can know pretty quickly which types of miles you might be able to use for the routes served out of here. So I find it helpful for that.
Yeah, exactly. Also, like, maybe you saw some information about how to get the Southwest Companion Pass, and you want to know where does Southwest fly from there. It's super easy to see, to click and see where Southwest flies. And Nick has a pretty good route network out of Albany on Southwest, so that's pretty good for him, and it clearly makes sense. Here's another thing you can do with flight connections. Suppose you want to go to Aruba and you want to see what are all the flights to Aruba. You could put Aruba in the to list, and then you could see all the flights to there. And so that could be useful. These are all the nonstop flights, and that could be really useful because, maybe you're not at one of these airports, but you know that you can easily get to, let's say, Chicago or Atlanta or whatever, and it can give you an idea of what the options are. So those are the things you can do with the free version of the tool. What I didn't show you here is that if you just have the free version, there are pop-up ads all over the place that can be pretty annoying. But it's still super useful as it is, I think. Now, Nick, you've used the free version quite a bit,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I got logged out at some point and I was too lazy to log back in. So I had been using the free version for quite a long time just because I didn't take the time to log in. And I don't really he's right that there are some ads, but I didn't find them particularly annoying, to be honest. It was just ads like you find on most sites. They do pop up every now and then, so mildly annoying. But I don't know. I found the free version to be entirely useful for that type of situation. All the ones that Greg has mentioned. If you just need to look at a certain airline, one specific airline or one specific airport, it can be really useful. But as Greg mentioned, in planning for our Million Mile Challenge, which you can look up millionmilemadness.com before or after to read about what we're doing with that. I have found the paid version to be incredibly useful. I finally did get around to logging in, and it's been much more useful for my purposes over these last few weeks for sure.
Yeah. And so let me show you some of the things that the paid version can do in addition to the free version. First of all, with airlines, you can select more than one. And so that could be really helpful in certain situations, like our Million Mile Madness Challenge, where we want to pick multiple qualifying airlines to show. You could also pick alliances. So, maybe you just want to see the SkyTeam Airlines, and you can do that very easily. Uh, Classes. So, like if you want to fly business or first class, for example, aircraft, you could actually limit to specific aircraft. And once you pick specific routes, the dates filter, prices, distance, and duration filters can all be really helpful to limit to the flights that you're really interested in because you can. So, dates, for example, let me talk about that. The reason this is useful is that some flights, you might see a flight to Aruba, but you want to fly on a Friday and maybe it only flies on Saturdays. So this will help you out that way by you could pick the dates you want to travel and it'll only show you routes that are available on that day. I'm going to give a couple specific now examples of what I've done in the past with this tool. So one thing is Singapore suites. So Singapore Airlines has their international first class, and they have two versions of their first class. They have sort of regular first class where you get a nice big plush seat and an incredible service, but then they also have suites. Their first class, which is suites class, and so suppose you want to see all the routes that's available. Well, you do some research and you find out that that Singapore flies their suites on the A380 aircraft. So what you do is you first filter to Singapore Airlines and then find the A380 and filter to that. And then boom, you can see all the routes visually where Singapore Airlines flies that. And then you can uh, log into Singapore Airlines and see whether you can use your Singapore miles to actually book those flights. I'll warn you ahead of time though, before you do that, that it's very hard to find availability on those.
I mean, it's a pretty awesome product, but that's great because there might be a route that you didn't consider. And that's one of the things I find this tool most useful for. That there are routes that airlines fly that I just wouldn't have necessarily known about if not for the tool and wouldn't have thought to look for. And if you're excited about something like that, like you really want to fly Singapore first class, it might not matter to you a lot which route you're going to fly. You just figure, oh, well, I want to work this into a trip at some point. And so being able to visually see where you might be able to connect those dots is really helpful. And I also find the ability to show more than one airline particularly useful so that you can figure out where two airlines might overlap because you might know their main hubs and so it'd be
Right.
pretty obvious where they might overlap if you're only looking at their main hubs, but a lot of them have secondary hubs or different airports that they might both serve as even not a hub but as an endpoint. And so being able to look at two airlines at once, I have found, particularly planning for our Million Mile Madness Challenge, that's useful because it shows me, all right, both of these airlines fly to this airport. Is there a way I can connect dots here and make these two things work together? Which, if you're planning an award trip, also can be helpful. If you know you have X and Y type of miles, then you may know that XYZ ABC airlines will be useful for you. So where do they all connect?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let me show off one more thing that I've done with this tool. There's so many things you could do, but one more thing I've done with it is try to find Delta lie flat seats within the United States. I want to know
Mm,
where can I fly within the U.S. from Detroit that where I
from
have lie
Detroit.
flat.
That seems very specific to me because I imagine Detroit as being in the middle of the country. I'm surprised that there are many options. But so off the top of my
Uh,
head, I would say you probably have somewhere in Hawaii, at least Honolulu, but I wouldn't know other than that.
yeah. So the way I'm going to do this is, and Detroit is my home airport, which is why I picked Detroit. The way I'm doing this, I filtered to Delta. I put Detroit as the from airport. And unfortunately, this tool does not have an option to pick, to filter to aircraft that have lie flat seats. But if you happen to know, for example, that the A330-900 neo and the A350 aircraft, and there's multiple versions of the A350, and I'll pick there's several 767s. I'll just pick one for this example. So you could pick all of those if you know that they happen to have lie flat seats, and then you can you can see, oh, okay, they fly to Atlanta, Minneapolis, LA. But let's see, do they fly every day? No. Okay, so to Atlanta, I can go on Monday, Tuesday, I mean Monday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, and so on. LA appears to be every day. Minneapolis, just certain days. And then once you've identified the routes that you're interested in, you can look them up on delta.com or on Google Flights and see if the particular flights you want are actually the lie flat seats that you're hoping for.
Yeah, one other thing I love about this, while you have it on this view, is on the left side right now, when you're just looking at all the routes that have the aircraft that might have the lie flat seats, it shows you the time, like the length of the nonstop flights. So I don't know. I like to kind of maximize sometimes and see, okay, how much flying time can I get for my
Mm,
miles? And
yeah,
especially on the way to Europe, I find that useful because there's a big difference to me between a flight that's scheduled for 6 hours and a flight that's scheduled for like 9 hours, for instance, in
right.
terms of, being able to get some sleep because I know there's going to be meal service and blah, blah, blah. And so a 6 hour flight's just too short for me in business class to really enjoy and get full advantage of. So I want one of those 7 or 8 or 9 hour flights. And so I think this can be really useful for quickly comparing that without having to Google how long is this flight or that one.
Right, right. Well, interestingly, you could use a duration filter and say I only want flights that are 8 hours or more, for example, and then you could see
Great point.
which ones are available there, and you could be pretty sure, even without the aircraft filter, that all of these are going to be lie flat seats.